back to my adventures in TAC. It was wild, but it was, I used to read the newspaper a little bit, maybe the front page, then go to the sports section, and go to the comics, and that was about it. But when I was in Tactical Air Command, it didn't take me very long. I was reading page 1 through about page 5. Why? Because somewhere in those first 5 pages, you'd read something about somebody getting upset about something in some country somewhere, and the United States maybe was going to get involved. Next thing you'd know, you'd be on your way there. And you'd have some guys that you might drop out of the airplane, a combat control team that would parachute down and set up some kind of command post down there. And then you'd be dropping heavy equipment to plow out a dirt field somewhere. And then the next thing you know, you'd have C-130s coming in with all kinds of support for whatever TAC was going to do, whatever our country wanted to do in this place. It could have been Guatemala, it could have been someplace in Africa, whatever. So it was a wild assignment. And then I listed a couple things here. One was a situation, France, then Congo, and the Rwanda. We had a 45-day temporary duty assignment to go to Évreux, France, which is right outside Paris, west of Paris, about 40 miles, 50 miles maybe, and support whatever was needed to be supported in Europe. And one of the missions that we had there that came up was we were going to fly a mission, this crew that I was with, and I don't know that any other crew did this. Maybe they did, but not that same day at least. We flew to Belgium out of Évreux, France. We picked up ammunition in Belgium at Brussels, and we flew down to the Congo. There was a situation down there where missionaries were being killed by, I want to call them terrorists. They didn't call them terrorists then. They called them rebels, rebel forces. And you got to understand that in the Congo, in Africa, their methods of warfare or hating, whatever it is they're hating, and they're going to wage some type of warfare against it, they're unbelievably gruesome. And they were taking these missionaries and just taking hacks of body parts, just like you'd scoop out watermelon balls or cantaloupe balls and just all kinds of stuff. And so we were taking helicopters down there to support whoever it was that was fighting against these rebel forces. And our job was to take down this ammunition out to a place called Bukavu in Rwanda, right outside Congo. It was we went into Leopoldville, which was a big city. It would be like Anchorage is to Alaska. Leopoldville was to the Congo. And the terrorists had struck there earlier, and their terminal was just pocketed with all kinds of 50 caliber holes in it, Anyhow, we got there, and there was a little command post that we went in to see, and we had been issued 45 caliber weapons up in Brussels, which we found to be a little unusual. We usually didn't fly any place and have a weapon with us, but they said you might need it down there in the Congo. So we got there, and we had these 45s strapped to us, and the guys in the command post says, we're not going to let you go out of there with those weapons. Why? Oh, you can pick them up on the way back through here, because you don't want to have a gun. If you have to bail out or you have to crash land and you survive, there are going to be rebel forces around that are going to be hunting for you. And if you have a gun, you're going to be tempted to, if somebody gets too close to you, to fire and try to kill that person. And that will bring on hordes of them, and then they're going to torture you like unreal. So you don't want to do that. You will, if they step just 1 inch from you, because you're covered up with leaves and all kinds of stuff, log that had fallen or something, don't make a peep, you know, because if they get you, it's going to be horrible. So anyhow, we flew out to this Bukavu, which was a village that predominantly was Belgium. And that's why Belgium was supporting this mission, because rich people in Belgium, come wintertime, they head south, just like people do here, or like anywhere. Why the hell freeze your ass when you can go down south, you know, to Hawaii or wherever it is? Well, that's what Rwanda was. This place called Bukavu had white stucco houses with red tile roofs. It was a beautiful looking place that had all these Belgians that would come down there in the wintertime. But the rebel forces were causing all kinds of chaos down there. So the Belgians asked for the U.S. support. And we had some guys down there who were working with the friendly forces that we had to assist with these rebels. Anyhow, we get out there, and this little airfield that we're supposed to go into was paved, but it was like a mountaintop that had been chopped off. One end to one end was black pavement, blacktop kind of thing, adequate to land there. So we tried to raise the tower. Nobody's in the tower. We thought this is sort of a tricky situation because we don't know whether the rebels are right there at the edge of the airfield waiting for us to land so they can pounce all over that airplane and riddle us with bullet holes, whatever. But we got to do our mission. So it was hard to find this place, so I went up to, steered us up to Victoria Falls, I think was the name of it. And from that point, I had to steer down to where this airfield would have been. And by God, we found it. And we circled around, didn't draw any fire, but couldn't get anybody in a tower. So we decided, what the hell, we'll land. We'll keep our engines running. And so we did. We landed there. And I tell you, Tom, it was just like something out of National Geographic. We dropped the cargo door, not the cargo door, but the crew entrance door down, and we kept 3 of the 4 engines running, and I went around the nose of the airplane kind of thing. The pilots were still up there, and we started looking for people, and all of a sudden, people start showing up, black people, and women, bare-breasted, tall women, with these baskets on their heads that were maybe 2.5, 3 feet high with all kinds of stuff in them, fruit and vegetables and stuff, you know. It was like a page out of National Geographic. And pretty soon, up over the hillside comes this Army colonel, mud from head to tail. I mean, just covered mud in his uniform. And he had an Air Force major with him, and he had a Navy ensign kind of guy, and one other Army captain. And we start chatting with him, and we said, hey, we've got this ammunition for you. Oh, that's nice, but do you have, what we really want is, do you have any shaving cream? Do you have any chewing gum? Do you have any candy bars? Do you have any of the necessities, you know, that we would just appreciate so much? So we went through our DOP kits and gave them everything, and pockets, and gave them everything that we could. And this colonel told us about, he has just gotten back from this mission where he had gone out with this interpreter who knew 7 different languages of tribes to spot one of the satellite posts that he had. And on the way out there, they were attacked by the rebel forces. And the guy who was the driver, this interpreter kind of thing, took the Jeep down over the side of this hillside and brought it to a stop. And they jumped out and they started running because these guys were after them. And they just kept running and running and running and running. And fortunately, it eventually got dark, and the guys probably wanted to play around with the Jeep more than anything. So they didn't persist. But this colonel said, we kept running and running as far as we could, and we didn't hear anything behind us. We laid down, caught our breath a little bit, and then got up and kept going. And he said it was pitch dark out, and they saw some glowing up in the horizon, and they sort of crept up there very quietly to observe it. It was 7-foot warriors, the Watusi warriors that you see on King Solomon Mines movie and stuff like that. These guys, all they had were spears, but nobody messed with them. Not our good side guys who were pretty vile in their own right. Not these rebel forces who were very wild. Nobody messed with these Watusi warriors. And this guy, who was the guide, spoke Swahili or whatever it was, their language, and got down and came in, hands up over that guy, and said, can you get us back to Bukavu? And if you do, we will give you 1,000 Congolese dollars each for each one of us. And that'd be it. Well, 1,000 Congolese dollars was like $250, to save each guy's life. And by God, they got him back there. So anyhow, that was the story. Oh, and this colonel also said, yeah, and we had a battle out here, and we have machine guns. This side that we're supporting, the good guys, have machine guns and whatever, and all these rebel forces, all they have are spears and arrows and things like that. And he said we were able to mow them down, and finally a lot of them just sort of quit. When we rounded them up, there were 120 some of them. And we took them into the village square, and they have a procedure in there where if they capture a bunch of these rebels, the women and children get to stone them to death. They took 100 of them, put them in a circle, and the women and children got to stone them to death while there were guys there with machine guns, so if anybody tried, they just zap them. They had 20 of them that they cut up and boiled and ate. Except they let 2 or 3 of them go back who saw all this, because they wanted those 2 or 3 guys to tell the terrorist guys, the rebel forces who are really vile, how bad these guys were. And I thought, I've flown into Vietnam before. Vietnam's a piece of cake compared to here, because they're relatively civil. They just shoot you in the head, you're dead. Here it's just unreal. But it was adventure, see? It was adventure, and I was getting a whole new education, to say the least. Anyhow, we flew out of there, and we came back home, and that's sort of one of my stories of C-130.